Uh, Hi, everyone. This is my first time in Bulgaria. I'm very grateful to Georgi, my friend. I am the CEO and founder for an agentic AI startup called Strategize. But until 2 weeks ago, I was also a professor in strategy at the University of Cambridge. I quit, so I'm just sort of doing this full time now, and I'll share why. But one of the things that I do teach at the MBA at the Cambridge Judge Business School is this elective called Strategy in the Age of AI, and it is meant specifically for obviously managers. And one of the big questions that we've all had is that do we need managers going forward? Which is kind of like sad because, I mean, you're teaching in a business school, people pay you to teach them how to be a manager, and in the class you have to tell them you might not have a job in 5 years, and, it sort of creates a bit of dissonance. So I was speaking to Georgie about it, and he said, you know what, maybe you should also say the same thing in front of people who are not managers or are developers and might appreciate it more. So the topic is, if you have enough GPUs, are you going to be replaced, or are you going to be awesome? Like, we need to know, right? So I think it's probably worth pointing out that we are living in extraordinary times. I think most people don't know or don't know what it feels like to be in an extrapolation that is completely off the charts. So if I had to give like a human example of reading this graph, I think there are two examples. The first one is, we've gone through 2.5 years of large language models. In terms of its penetration in the world, it's the equivalent of the internet's, say, over 13 years. So while you could argue that, well, it's not a fair comparison, ChatGPT runs on the internet, but then you would say the internet is not a fair comparison because it runs on electricity, and then you go to electricity and you say, well, is electricity a really good example? It was powered by steam. And then you keep going back and back, and then you have to be thankful to the caveman who found fire, right? So we can't just say this is an unfair comparison. Every comparison is unfair from that perspective. But one thing is this, that you've gone through 3 years of AI. There's the equivalent of going through 13 years of the internet. And I think the other example is I've never been to the Everest, but I have a feeling that if I was to go and stand at the base camp and I was to go and look like this, the peak would look like this, right? So we are facing Everest, and it is at the speed, and it's good to recognize that. I'm not saying everything is going to get destroyed, but it's good to know, right, what we are dealing with. So we have entered an exponential age of intelligence. So the question is, what do we do with intelligence? What's the point, right? So I think a lot of you would know about Sway Bench, right? It's like the bane of developers. Like every 3 months, the Sway software engineering bench gets released, and it turns out 80% of the job that us developers were doing, it can now be done through large language models. And if you don't know about Sway Bench, I would say Google it. It's useful to know what it is benchmarking. But also, it's not just software. So software is where it started. So the developers and the data scientists who made the large language models, decided to get disrupted by it first. It's easy to develop stuff that you know intimately well. So they got really good at coding, but when they got really good at coding, they started getting really good at other stuff as well. So here you see two other graphs. One is for biology, frontier level biology, and frontier level math. 99.99999% of the jobs that we do today in the world is not frontier. Frontier is like splitting the atom or finding DNA for the very first time. So everything we do is definitely one step behind the frontier. So we already know that by 2030, they're saying that an LLM would basically be able to independently solve scientific mysteries. So 4 years, give or take from now, right? Which is fine. I don't think about scientific mysteries every day. It does not come up as a thing in my life, but everything else does. So if you are able to crack scientific mysteries, you can probably do everything else underneath that. And this is how I would like you to look at this graph is saying it's not just software developers, guys, it's biologists, it's mathematicians. LLMs were really bad with math because of the nature of how they are built. They are prediction machines. So they don't compute, they predict until they started reasoning. And because of reasoning, you now have math. They're quite good at it. But you don't need to put math on. So frontier math is not done by giving an equation to an LLM to solve. You give the equation to the LLM who then writes the Python code to solve it. So it's easier. The actual compute is done in a deterministic way. The point being that all of the lovely stuff I talked about is now worth $10. Right? It's $10 per million tokens. A token is a word. You produce 1 million words of frontier knowledge, that's $10. So I think it was good that I quit Cambridge University. I mean, I don't think I can survive at $10 per 1,000 words or per million words spoken. I'll run out of calories. It'll be too much. But it's true. It's true, right? We last year at Cambridge University, I and a couple of other professors did a benchmark in which we ran a simulation of a digital twin of an actual automotive company. The gentleman has left now, but it was an actual. We didn't do it on Ampere or Renault, but we actually did it on Tesla, and we gave that digital twin as a video game to MBA students and executives, and we had thousands of them play it. We took the top 4 players in corporate strategy, and then we benchmarked it with ChatGPT playing the same simulation. It was not good news for the best strategists in the world. So even for CEOs, we wrote that article. It came in Harvard Business Review. It was called AI Can Mostly Outperform Human CEOs, and this was last year. So I effectively put myself out of a job. The business school didn't like it either because we promised to build the future of CEOs and management, and the next Steve Jobs should come from University of Cambridge. Turns out it comes from a mathematical model, so kind of puts everything in perspective. And the reason I think I'm talking about my personal experiences more is because it's very easy to come in and say, well, everything is going to get destroyed because I'm making money on it, right? But that's not the point. The point is that it has affected my life, it is probably affecting your life, and you're standing at Everest knowing fully well that you might not be ready to climb the peak, but guess what? You have to. There's no other option. So just telling you that I'm probably as screwed as everyone else in this room, which brings me to this graph. These are a lot of frontier lab kind of graphs. This is about forecasting. So what do managers do? What is the difference between great leaders and mediocre leaders? Great leaders tend to be right about the future more often than not, right? If you're talking about money, profit and loss, of course, great leaders also need to be empathetic. You don't want a jerk for a manager. And so parking all of that aside, for a shareholder, a great leader is someone who can make great predictions. At its crux, that's what the role of a CEO or of a CXO or of a senior manager is. And we are not very good at forecasting in general. So this is something known as a super forecaster. A super forecaster is a human being who has consistently beaten, in terms of accuracy, complex predictions about politics, economy, exchange rates, stock prices, versus thousands of general humans. These are known as forecasting tournaments, where nerds get together and they sit down and they predict. For LLMs, they weren't very good with GPT-4. The lower you go, the better it is, the more accurate you get. So in July 2025, it is missing the latest state-of-the-art model, which is Claude 4.5. But the thing over here is this, that this red line for LLM forecasting is based entirely on no tool and no additional data. So basically, they benchmarked 2025 knowledge human beings with 2023 knowledge LLMs. So no tools, no internet, and even then the LLMs beat the super forecasters, the very best predictors in the world. It was able to beat without looking at fresh data. It was able to do that based on the training it had of history. And while I understand the gentleman over here said history is done, not really. History teaches you patterns. And when you do forecasting, patterns is what enables a good forecast from a bad forecast. And so the information for the LLMs was not updated. The LLM was running on 2023 information, human forecaster was running on 2025. It predicted beyond 2025 based on historical patterns, and it was more accurate. Which means that being a CEO is not as grand as it used to be. I mean, my shareholders can call up ChatGPT and say, is Hamza doing a good job? They'll probably say, not really. And, so you get into that sort of issue. This is a logarithmic graph. If I had done the y-axis, or the Meter Labs would have done the y-axis, it would have just been a graph like this. You would not be able to see the difference because it will be like climbing up a wall. So they made it logarithmic, and in the area of LLMs and GPUs, time matters. Time matters because you give more time. The LLM thinks for longer. When it thinks for longer, it does a better job. It's a thing. So at GPT-5, we've reached 1 hour of consistent work. We think from this graph that by the middle of 2026, an LLM can be given a job, an agent can be given a job that can run for up to 8 hours. So you can give it like a really complex problem, and it will take up to 8 hours to solve it and do it correctly. A human will probably take an year. Big difference. We do state-of-the-art harnesses around state-of-the-art models. And for example, in our harness, we've been able to hit around an hour ourselves and up to 300 tool calls a single shot before the agent gives you the final answer. It does 300 investigations without asking for your permission and tends to do really well. Tends to do really well, right? So if we give them more time, if we give them more GPU, we climb the Everest faster, right? So what do we do? Any ideas, any thoughts? I know it's a big room. I'm pretty sure people have their thoughts and ideas, but this is not very comforting. Or do you guys feel comforted with the idea that, I mean, are you loving it that an LLM can that sort of beat your CEO in predicting the market? I mean, what's the point of having him or her there, right? So it kind of sucks in general for senior managers now as well. It's not just software developers or biologists and whatnot. So what do we do from here? So we need to learn from history. Does anybody know about John Henry Irons? Okay, so John Henry Irons is this, comes from this folklore. We do not know whether John Henry Irons was a real person or was a made-up story, but it's an American one, and it's back in the Industrial Revolution, which was huge. And in Industrial Revolution, they got a steam drill. Big innovation. The LLM of its time was the steam drill. And so this tall African-American guy represents this whole community of mine workers, predominantly from the same sort of ethnic background. And then you had this boss come in and say, I have got this steam drill that can just drill through the mines 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day. It just keeps on drilling. You don't have to pay it much other than steam and maybe some oil to maintain it. So John Henry Irons did not like that. He was like, screw that guy. So he goes to his boss and he says, I want to do a competition between myself and the steam drill. And this guy is like a tall guy. This guy is like a machine. He's like the Incredible Hulk. I mean, you can't, you don't want to pick a fight with this guy, right? He's huge. And he says, if the machine fails and I beat it single-handedly, you will not bring the machine into the mine and you will not fire any of my brothers and sisters. I mean, if a 6'8" guy comes in and tells me that, I'll probably say yes, don't want to pick a fight with the guy. He was like, sure, let's do the race. So according to the folklore, they did the race. Guess who won? How many of you think John Henry Irons won? One person. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everybody else thinks the machine works. No, actually, John Henry Irons won by like a very small margin. But then he died. He had a heart attack and he died. Guess what happened the next day? The boss switched on the machine. Right? So the question is, do you want to be a legend or do you want to be rich? I mean, I don't know. I don't want to die that soon. That kind of sucks. So do you want to be John Henry Irons? It's your call. Some people want to die at the altar, but as somebody who teaches innovation and so on and so forth, I'm wired to believe that you need to harness things instead of fighting them. It's kind of like saying, it rains a lot in Cambridge. I want to make a machine that takes away all the clouds. Well, not really. I just want a roof on my head. So you don't want to fight laws of nature. It's usually a dumb idea. But if you do want to do it, good luck. And so LLMs are very much following the laws of nature. And if you look at sort of the state of the art or frontier labs, the developers there are already quite religious about LLMs. They talk about how they're breeding intelligence in a equivalent of a petri dish. So of course there is some crazy there, but don't want to be John Henry Irons, right? So what does that mean? Which brings me to the last slide. I was trying not to do a very long talk. But so like any good academic in the age of AI, I asked AI, what does it think will replace humans, right? So the best thing to do it was to look at it from a historical perspective. Again, history is important, pattern recognition is important. Yes, it has happened, but you need to learn from it to be successful in the today and tomorrow. So when we had the agricultural revolution, we found out irrigation. We started digging sort of canals and controlling when plants grow and when plants die, things that were in the hand of God until we decided that we could just store water somewhere. That was the agricultural revolution, and we had very simple jobs back then, and a lot of them got replaced with, farmer, like more specialization built around that technology. So that's one. So this is like 10,000 years ago, right? Then you had the Industrial Revolution, completely wrecked a lot of things, but produced more jobs, including some of the jobs that have built this building. You could have never built this building without the Industrial Revolution. You would not have had air conditioning. Now you have air conditioning, repairmen and repairwomen, and so on and so forth. So an explosion of new kinds of jobs while taking away old kinds of jobs. But more jobs and on balance because of this, right? And then you had the reason why all of you are here. You are the children of the big tech revolution. You've gotten rich and successful and whatever else is a good indicator in Bulgaria of a great life because of the big tech revolution. So all of us are here because of this, and we collectively displaced switchboard operators, typists, travel agents. Who goes to a travel agent anymore? I don't know. Like, I don't want to. People who do Fuji films and used to make pictures and Kodak moments, gone. How many of you know of a business that is sustainable and is growing and does so by printing out film. None. But what did you get? You guys. We got you guys out of this. And I take you guys any day over somebody who's I personally quite like developers. I think they have far less bullshit in their system than sort of managers. So generally, I'm happy that this change happened. You have web developers, you have all of those things. Then what happens with the AI revolution? So this time around, I was too lazy to sit down and do my calculation, so I asked our AI what it thinks it's going to replace. So it basically put in a bracket there, which is called conjecture. Thank God it did not lie. I think one of the things you will notice over here is that at this point, the AI thinks more jobs in absolute count will be replaced. So the number of jobs coming in their place is going to be lesser in count. It's conjecture. I think that if I had to read this, and please don't take this as gospel, it's a bunch of tokens, but the way I see it, it almost appears that everything seems to have an AI attached next to it in the title. Basically, what even the very best AI thinks that it's going to be a hybrid model. And which brings me to sort of the last point I wanted to make. Why do I love developers so much? Because unlike most of the people in this world, you actually have agency on where this goes. A lot of people think that technology happens and one fine day, we get hit by it like a bus and we don't know what happened. But actually, technology is done by people like you. Millions and billions of dollars are flowing in to get till here, which means you have way more agency. So if there is a doctor or a lawyer or an educator who needs to be AI augmented, who's going to do it for them? You guys, right? So I think, and like any other conference, this is a special one because you get to choose. So there are so many new jobs that you will be powering. So please don't be afraid. Yeah, shit is going to hit the fan. Okay, fine, whatever. But you are in charge. You're still in charge. And make the best of it. And with that, I would say thank you.
Thank you, Hamza. I think that we have some time for some questions.
Okay, I can give answers.
You have questions?
No questions? You guys are the best. I love developing 5 week I did. Bugger off.
So right. At least a question from me.
Okay, yes.
Well, I saw on the last slide what opportunity we have as engineers, but what about the CEOs?
They don't have a lot of opportunity. You guys are the next ones, so don't mess it up.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.